Oh god, I yawned just as we started recording. I'm not well again. I say again. I think for someone who gets ill a lot, I think the last time I was like proper deathly ill was Christmas. All throughout last Christmas.
That's pretty good going if you've made it out.
Yeah, that's not a bad run.
It ain't bad. I may have had one or two, but I don't recall them at all. So I may have just been really lucky. I feel like I've been fighting it off. As soon as Sunday was over, I had to go to Liverpool for Effie's big gay brunch, and there was a lot of sort of stress with travel and all of that. The second, because I took a train there, trains weren't running at midnight. And Fee very graciously came and got me. The moment we got home, our noses just started running. And I think we've both been holding off on being ill until the stress response had stopped. And then both of us, I've never seen it that sudden happen to two people at once.
It truly is the classic, I can stop and relax for half a second. Fuck. Immune response is dead.
Yeah, so I'm not able to hang around the whole thing this week. Sorry, everybody. But Sunday went well. I had a defining commander moment as I stood in the ring and 6 other wrestlers tried to knock me over, which wasn't planned. The plan was for me to cut a promo and then they would all try and knock me down. Instead, something happened. I got one sentence in and they started and I thought, you know what? Nah. When the commander speaks, she fucking reaches the full stop. So I just stayed stood up until eventually Helen Charlotte Campbell, who I fucking adore, battered me so hard I fell. Yelling the final line of my ring entrance, which is "hit me up on Grindr." It was great, but you know what? I can't win a fake fight, but I know someone who won very real things.
Oh, shit.
Congratulations, Laura Kate Dale. Best woman in England, officially.
If we narrow it down to best at journalism about video games in the UK that is a woman, I'm the best in this 12-month period.
Hey, I fought in the UK's first ever trans femme deathmatch. We're all about whittling things down to get our historical, victories.
Look, sometimes you gotta get a little niche with it, but you know what was nice about that win? It's my 10th year doing this full time. It was the 10th anniversary of these awards. That was quite a little thing. My mum was there, which was quite nice. It's the first time she's ever come along to a video game thing I've done, and it was me winning a thing.
Oh.
But you know what's more important than all of that?
For me, it would be shoving it down everyone's throat, but I imagine yours is a bit more magnanimous.
It's not what you suggested, but it's not more magnanimous.
Oh.
For the next 12 months, I've decided that this means I have the correct opinions about video games, you see?
Oh, nice.
Because I have a piece of glass that says I do the best words about video games, which means I need to dig up all of my takes about video games that no one agrees with, and for the next 12 months, I get to assert that I am on the right side of history on them.
And who's going to argue? Because all you have to do is be you're not even disagreeing with me, you're disagreeing with the glass, and I wouldn't disagree with the glass.
Are you disagreeing with the awards committee that gave me a big heavy piece of glass? Because I have the big heavy piece of glass.
The glass has spoken!
Yeah, so I'm going to spend the next 12 months being you can't argue with me when I say that the original ending of Mass Effect 3 was good, actually, and it was kind of cowardly that it got changed.
I'm with you on the cowardly, at the very least.
I have my love of Mass Effect 3's original ending. I will maybe assert that Skyward Sword is one of the best Zelda games ever made. I know that that's a controversial one I have.
God, I'm already presenting the glass.
Look, Look, I've got the one that I've got in my back pocket that I was like, do I drop it? Maybe this is the time. Weapon degradation in Breath of the Wild is good, actually.
Oh, no.
I will respect the decision of the glass. You better hope that glass is sturdier than a Hylian longsword.
So
Oh,
that's what
dear.
I will be doing with having won an award, is I will be weaponizing it for future use.
Just make sure it's not a Hylian weapon. I've got a ton of these.
Ah!
Oh, but congratulations. Like, you genuinely deserve it.
Yeah.
You know.
Thank you.
I'm glad I don't have to burn anything to the ground.
My main takeaway was I genuinely did not think it was going to happen, as demonstrated by the fun... So I went up to do my little acceptance speech, and completely was not prepared, and was, emotions occurred. I had people coming up to me afterwards to be like, oh, your acceptance speech was so moving. And I'm like, I'm glad that's what you took away, and not that I was an embarrassing mess, because I was like,
Been there. Been there.
Search my brain for a woman I would like to thank in this industry, and to say thank you to someone for something.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So I did it, and now I'm gonna have considerably shitter video game opinions because I don't have to aim for anything anymore. I've proven myself. I can have shit opinions now.
Wear a cape and a crown. Like, do the whole WWE King of the Ring thing. Like, you're now Queen Laura. You just get to act regal.
You've suggested WWE belt, for example, and now I'm thinking, could I affix my glass award to a belt? Could I wear it like a wrestling belt?
That would be fucking amazing. Then you go into Subway, right, and you're like, I want to eat fresh for free. And then when they say, well, no, you got to pay, you just like look down at the belt. And they will say, "Oh my god, it's the best woman writing about video games in Britain."
Journalism impact. My journalism, it had an impact. Ooh.
Have a free bag of Doritos as well, but only the Doritos. Okay, yes, you can have the Walkers as well. Yeah, you've got it made for the next 12 months.
And until I go back to irrelevance, but I can coast for a bit. Yeah. Anyway, you're ill, so we got to jump into video game stuff here on Podquisition. You've been playing a game this week, and I have finished that game this week, and I bet you have opinions, and so do I. Do you want to talk about Echoes of Wisdom?
Yes, I've renamed it to I Wanna Octa-Rock All Night.
Yeah.
It's a game about summoning... I've said this on the Jimquisition. It's a game about summoning endless Octa-Rocks, and every time one of them dies, you say, we've got reserves, like Longshanks in Braveheart. This game is great. This game's really great.
Right.
Yeah, like, obviously I was going to get it for work, but you made me legit looking forward to it. And you were right, because it's so good.
I'm glad I wasn't wrong to think that this would click for you.
I'm a big fan of when a game developer does not enforce their one way on you. And it can be tricky to balance that with having a game that's so open-ended that it's too vague and you don't know what the fuck you're doing. But they nailed this thing of, you are summoning these like items and these monsters to perform useful tasks. And depending on what items and monsters you have, you can solve them in many different ways. Some of them downright breaking puzzles. And the developers don't mind because... do what you want. Like, there's one where it was like, clearly I had to use the little like thing where you can remote grab boxes and other things and enemies as well. And they were like going round this flow of water, and you had to time grabbing a box to pull it up and onto a switch. And then I was just like, well, no, what if I summoned a boulder and threw it over there? It's like, yeah, go on, do that, you fucking fool. And it works just fine.
I have some great examples of that I've encountered. Because I think, like, conceptually the thing they do well is everything that you theoretically would need to complete the dungeon is in the dungeon. You could complete the dungeon using the tools the dungeon gives you, but you can also completely ignore the tools the dungeon gives you. Right at the start in the first dungeon, there's a big rock that you're meant to, like, try and push it, and it tells you, hey, you can magically grab stuff and move it around, and there's a switch behind it. You can completely avoid getting that magical ability to hold things by just making a bridge of beds around the big rock to go step on the switch, and just never touch the big rock.
I love it.
There's a dungeon that's whole thing is raising water so you can get higher up. You can skip that entire dungeon by making water cubes up the walls.
I love the water cubes.
You can get fucking infinite height because as long as one of the cubes is touching the wall, you can just keep going up and up and up. But there's such an interestingly designed dungeon that it's like, oh, it's clear what you want me to do, and I do want to go see the cool content you made. But I know that I could break this if I wanted to, and that's good knowledge.
Yeah, it's just throughout the entire thing. there's like half a dozen ways with some of this stuff. Do you want to build a bridge of beds? Or do you have, like, the flying tiles? You summon one of them and just ride it across?
I found my favourite gimmicky way of gaining height early in this game, if you want to, like, break the intended ways of getting over height. You summon a crow and, like, use your magic to hold on to it. Then you turn around and pick up a piece of meat, and then you do the thing where, like, the object you're holding on to drags you around rather than the reverse.
Oh.
And the crow will start trying to fly up toward the meat you're holding in your hands, but can't reach it because you're moving at the same time. And you'll just start flying upwards as the crow chases the meat you're holding.
That is genius.
Right? There's shit like that is mechanically consistent, really interesting interactions that you can just go, I'm fucking off. I'm off to do my own thing.
Like, as you describe that, it does put me in mind of Tears of the Kingdom, with just how inventive people can be with the various, like, machinery they can build with all the little building blocks. It's like that, but puzzle solutions. There are all these tools, and you can combine them in really interesting ways, depending on how, you know, how much you're feeling like deploying some ingenuity.
Yeah.
Like that would have never occurred to me. Normally, if I can't Octorok my way out of a problem, I don't want to know the problem.
I'm on my second playthrough because I finished it and I'm playing it through on stream at the moment, and I've been watching other people to learn what weird interactions people have found. My favourite one is if you stand, like, with your feet just on the edge of a bed, looking onto the bed, and drop one of those little tornado frogs, it will make the bed shoot up into the air in a random direction and just throw you up at height. Which is a great way of getting over high objects. You just stand on a bed, drop the tornado frog, and it fucking launches you.
See, I've not been combining too much. I'm not really imaginative when it comes to problem solving.
Neither did I on my first playthrough, but I'm loving finding out that there's more there.
Yeah, the idea of, like, getting more interactions. Like, I was just impressed when I realised I could use the grabby thing to pull the enemy fish out of the water and pull them onto the land where they were helpless.
Oh, exactly. The number of times I've, like, summoned my, army of Octoroks, and then just grabbed an enemy to be like, no, you can't run away. You stand there, get pelted.
I love it. I've got two criticisms. One I think is incredibly common. Just that long list of things you can summon to the point where you end up with, like, a dozen enemies that you will never use because they're not very good and they're in the way, and you've got to do a lot of scrolling. And there are ways to sort them, but there's still a lot of scrolling left and right. I think having more than sorting, having filters and having ones you can disable from that scroll would be good.
Yeah.
The only other thing is the accessories you can wear. Just de-equip one if I select another to equip it. Don't tell me I have to go and manually unequip it and then go and equip it.
Have you found the ability to equip multiple yet?
No, I want that. Where's that?
At the bottom right, there is a small lake, not the big lake. Go to the small lake. There is a cave on it with a fairy in who you can pay money to equip more accessories. Because here's the thing. I agree with you. I got really annoyed with that until I realised there was a mechanic for equipping multiple, and then it made sense because I was like, oh, it's not auto-unequipping, because at some point in this game there's going to be multiple and it wouldn't know which to auto-unequip.
That's way better, because then I can have the jump one on all of the time.
Oh yeah, no, 100% that frog jump one is the best one in the game.
best.
It's fucking great.
It's the very best one.
But yes, go to the small lake in the bottom right. I think you can, by the time you spent all the money, have like 5 of them at once, which
awesome.
is, beautiful.
And I'm at a point where, like, because of the crows, I had so many rupees. Because, again, like, some of these monsters do little secondary things. And crows, if they hit an enemy, rupees fly the fuck everywhere. And it's great. Like, sometimes you can get, like, I think, like, 9 or 10, if you're lucky, if you get a blue one coming out. It's wonderful. I do like just various sort of things you can do in combat, as well as, because you've got the swordsman form. I end up getting so engrossed in summoning monsters that I forget I can just at least temporarily get a sword and start hitting things myself, because I'm here like, what if I had 3 Octoroks and a wolf?
I genuinely kind of wish that they'd just not cowered it out and just not given us that. I wish that they just really committed to, no, you use your summons and that's it.
I can understand why, because there have been a few moments where either there are a lot of monsters or the AI is just, because they're not smart, and I'm like, spear moblin, my friend, you could hop onto that little ledge instead of, like, firing at the side of the ledge.
It's a bandage over a problem.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's there in worst case scenarios, and early game it's kind of useful for its increased jump height, but, like, it was never my go-to tool.
No, same here. Like, I do like having it in the bag, but I will use it as a last resort because it's more fun to find out, like, which enemies are useful, which ones are situational. I love that things like the electric balls that run along walls.
Oh, yeah.
You can just, like, fire them directly at something. Then the moment it hits, fire another one, and you've got projectiles. They're no longer summoned enemies.
Yeah.
You're shooting electric balls.
That's how I use the little rolling armadillos, is I use them as bullets.
Yes, I've used them like that a few times as well. They're great for that. In the early game, you've got the snakes, because they come out so fast.
Just shoot ropes at them.
Yeah. Sorry, you said shooting ropes, and then I...
Yeah, I know.
I
thought it would get you.
Yeah, and I'm just so into it. I love the going back to old towns. There are side quests again, which from these sorts of games, I didn't expect so much of that.
They do a really good job of, like, holding them back so you have to visit 3 or 4 times and there'll still be more stuff to do.
Yeah. And, you know, they've even made some of the summon stuff work really well there. Like, you know, certain NPCs that want to see specific monsters, and you can, like, fight it, learn it, summon it in front of them, and they can be like, oh, wow, it is that thing. I both liked and got grumpy at, but mostly liked the one where you're given a fish and the fish will shatter. It actually looks disgusting. I wouldn't want to eat that fish. The way it just sort of crumbles when it hits something.
It breaks like a stale loaf of bread shattering.
But it's like, you've got to find a way to get this fish through enemies, or just kill them first and then get the fish. But then get it up to a high place where someone is without throwing or dropping the fish. So it's this thing of, okay, I could build these little steps with bridges and then place the fish. Oh, but now the fish is in front of me, so I can't climb up.
I gotta go quick because it's going to cool down and the man won't eat it if it's cold.
Yeah, it's inventive within its own inventive system, which allows you to be inventive as well. I really appreciate that there's no limit on how often you can summon, only on what things you can summon based on the points you have.
Yeah.
Like, you start with 3 points of summons, and, you know, a lot of the enemies just cost 1 point, a lot of the items. Then you see ones that start costing 2, and then even 3. I'm at the point now where I've got 5 points, and nothing I have is above that. And of course it gets even more lenient then, because as well as earning more points, some of the things, especially enemies, will become cheaper to summon.
Yes.
Like, as you gain levels, like the little thing with you gains levels. But I love that idea that it's like, yeah, this game could have given you limits on how often a summon would stick around, or how often you could summon in a certain period of time, or whether it would need to be gauged by some sort of mana bar or something. But it's no. Like I said, we have reserves. You could summon as many Octoroks as you like, you know, up to 4 or 5. But if one dies, boom, another one straight in.
Exactly. If you want to spend all of your points on a single huge creature and it gets killed, like the second it dies, there's a new one of that same creature right back out.
Yeah, and it's that exact sort of system that lets you, like we were talking about, use the armadillos or the snakes as projectiles. And the devs don't mind, because they could have made it quote-unquote more challenging, but it wouldn't have been as fun. I just really respect that, because I think, especially for Nintendo, I think sometimes they can get a bit precious about their systems, where they're like, we want you to engage with this idea we had in a certain way. The most obnoxious, of course, being the Pokemon Let's Go's when it's in docked mode, and it's like, well, no one would use the motion controls if we didn't force them, which is just one of the worst attitudes you can have. Whereas this, really, there's no bottlenecking. It's, you are restricted by what's there and what those things do, and your imagination. And, you know, obviously there's that point limit. But that doesn't become a massive problem. That's just enough of a restriction to get you thinking and to keep these as puzzles.
Yeah.
But other than that, just how do you want to approach this combat situation? We've got half a dozen ways. How do you want to do this puzzle? We got half a dozen ways.
Yeah. I have, a couple of, I think this game is fantastic. Having finished it, I absolutely love it. I have a couple of critiques of it. They're minor things, they don't fundamentally stop me loving this game, but I will still talk about them a little bit because I think they're worth talking about. The big one that I can talk about without being too spoilery is, a month before this game came out, I put out a video based on a bunch of quotes that Aonuma said back in 2016 about what it would take for us to get a Zelda game where Zelda was playable, and that I was a little concerned about some of those quotes and some of the design decisions being made. Having now finished Echoes of Wisdom, I feel like I was right to have the concerns that I did. There are some moments in this game, little moments in the narrative that feel unnecessary and feel like they exist because there is a status quo about Link as the male hero that needs to be preserved even when Zelda is the protagonist. And one thing that I don't think is spoilery to say is that there's a point in this game where a prophecy is mentioned about a priestess and a hero. I heard that and went, oh, is this going to be clever and it turns out they're talking about the same one person. Zelda is the priestess and the hero.
That would have been awesome.
Yeah. No, Link's the hero. He's the hero, despite not being the playable one saving the world. He doesn't do any of the dungeons or anything, but he's still the hero because he's the hero, not her. She's not a hero.
I don't think they mean it as obnoxiously as it comes across, but it does come across at points where they're don't forget who the real hero is here.
Yeah.
And I don't think they mean it that harshly, but...
But again, when you pair this with, Aonuma saying stuff maybe 7 years ago, talking about, if Zelda was the hero, what would Link be doing? Would Link need saving? That sort of incredulity about Link not being, quote-unquote, the hero, you then look at choices like this and you go, that feels like you wanted boys playing this to still know that their hero was the hero. He's not being replaced as the hero, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
And it's not a big thing, but there's little decisions like this that are peppered throughout the game where I'm I wish you hadn't felt the need to. And it sucks that I have those critiques, because, they don't fundamentally change the fact that I think this game is fantastic. They're just things that I wish I didn't have to caveat with.
Yeah. It's just a lot of NPCs as well, just name-dropping him. It's not quite levels of whenever Poochie's not on screen, people are asking, where's Poochie? But his name comes up often enough where I'm I'm right here. I'm right here, and I've done a fuck sight more than Link in the past fucking 8 hours.
That didn't bother me, but for me, the logic that worked was Zelda is deliberately hiding who she is and hiding her identity, and they're not meant to know that that's you. And I was okay, yeah, if there was previously a hero before he got kidnapped, I'm yeah, that's fine, whatever. That said, I do really like a lot of the background of Link's characterization prior to this game starting. I think there is some really, really interesting narrative stuff they do with Link that I would love to see them carry forward into future iterations of that character, that I think are really interesting character directions. But yeah, it's a bloody good game.
Yeah, no, it's fantastic.
I am glad that the Switch is continuing to get games of this inventiveness and quality this far into its lifespan.
Yeah, pretty much. I'm pleased about that. No complaints. Well, I had a couple.
Did you want to run off and duck away to get some sleep now that you've Zelda'd?
Yeah, let me do that.
Go on, go get a nap.
Yeah. Thank you all. I am going to go just feel like death.
Sometimes you just got to feel like death a little bit.
Yep. Bye.
Bye.
Hope you rest well. Bye. Hey, Conrad.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm alright. I played more of that Void's Vigil this week.
Yeah, how's that been going?
It's good. I didn't really go into any detail last week because I kind of wanted to give Steph a chance to play it, but I think Steph probably forgot about it in light of Zelda anyway, and...
I mean, Zelda's a very distracting presence.
Absolutely. So I just wanted to, go over it a little bit, because it is kind of interesting. Bone Razor Minions did the thing of taking that Horde Survivors gameplay and sort of recontextualizing it with some more, I don't want to say tower defense elements, but maybe that's the way to put it. By using the environment to change the gameplay as much as the weapons that you're selecting and using those in concert. Void's Vigil instead sort of transforms it into discrete linear chunks of action where you go from room to room to room, the room types being randomized as you go along. And the way the environment plays out differently this time is that you will have spawns of devices, I guess is what I would call them, in each of these rooms that serve different functions. Some of them contain resources, and some of them produce enemies to be destroyed or other defensive mechanisms. And by hovering within a sort of area around them, you can hack these and disable them. In the case of resources, you get the resources, and likewise shut down additional enemy swarms coming in when you destroy the enemy generators. That's, of course, interesting because we all know in these sorts of games, the more enemies that are being produced, the faster your potential for growth in terms of getting rewards and turning that around into more powerful abilities. And that's no different here. But instead of leveling your character, it's all cash that is spent in stores in between each of the stages. There's a bunch of different types of shops that appear randomly. You have gunsmiths that will provide you with the opportunity to buy additional weapons. You can have up to 5. This is also where you level them. Every weapon is tied to an element, and there are, I think, 5 elements in the game. You can purchase from another shop gems and items that increase your level in these elements, and that thereby makes the associated weapons more powerful. And so the game becomes a matter of balancing out getting all of these elements and combining them with weapons to get them more powerful. Weapons will merge or offer the opportunity for you to merge them when they get to their 3rd experience level. And, then there's a bunch of other associated passive abilities and active abilities that you can purchase. And actually, one of the interesting things about those is as you level those, it reduces the cool rate initially, and when you get to the 3rd level of those, it gives you the opportunity to just make them passive abilities that trigger over and over again throughout levels. Which is a neat approach and strategically interesting, because I think there's one ability that I particularly like that turns all of the currency on the screen when you use it into version of the currency that is worth 50% more. But I want to be able to time when I use that to be more effective. So I don't want that to become a passive ability, or it will just trigger whenever, and I might not be able to maximize its value. So yeah, there's a bunch of little nuance in all of that I kind of like. I think the weapons are pretty cool, but they're pretty standard for what this is. I think the aesthetic is really, really cool. It's all bio-cybernetic. It's dark, but it's all sprites. It's all done in the same sprite style as Bone Razor Minions. It's just a completely different aesthetic. The music is great. All of the music is really, really good. And as the levels progress, the songs get progressively more intense. And the way that the unlock in the campaign mode goes, you start doing 3 stages, then 5, then 7, then 9, and that music just keeps ramping up as those get longer and longer.
Nice.
Yeah, it's good. Every sequence of stages ends with a boss encounter with a thing called a conservator, which is, it is what it is. It's fine. It doesn't feel that dramatic, frankly. And if you've survived the wave before, in a lot of cases, it's going to feel a little underwhelming. But they're still balancing things, so that may change. The other part is that there is an entire card game in this also.
Okay.
Yeah. As you play the game, there are random drops of cards that you can collect, and those are then added to your collection for use in the card game that I haven't even touched yet. I opened it up, I looked at a grid, I said, okay, this is a 5x3 grid of 2 opposing card hands. I will figure out what this is later. But there is a whole card game in it. I don't know if it's good. I suspect it probably is pretty good. But I don't know. and there's going to be another mode that's still in development that hasn't been released. There's a survival mode. There's a lot here, again, for a very low price, and everything I've played of it is pretty tight and fun to play, and different, again, from a lot of this other Survivors stuff. So I would encourage checking it out.
I have it downloaded after you recommended it. I haven't made time to start it yet, but everything you said today has me interested. And then you mentioned card game, and I'm like,
yeah, I knew that would clinch it for you. Yeah,
you knocked me over the edge into fine. I'll find time for it.
But yeah, that's pretty much what I've played this week, other than just more Satisfactory that isn't really interesting to talk about. You play anything else?
Honestly, the main thing I've been playing this week is Balatro's on mobile now. I've been doing a bit of traveling, and Balatro on mobile is, first of all, most important thing I can say about a mobile game, it's not a huge battery drain.
That's big.
That is about the best thing I can say for a game like this is it doesn't noticeably drain my battery more than just being on my phone anyway would do, and that's really nice. It controls well with a touchscreen interface. I played this on Switch, on console previously, so I was used to controller inputs. I imagine this is probably kind of similar to how the mouse inputs on the game work, but let's say you're in the shop and you want to buy a card. You drag it to a specific area of the screen to purchase it, or a separate area of the screen to purchase and use at the same moment, rather than like clicking it and then clicking a little buy button below it.
On PC, it's just the buttons like it is on Switch.
Okay, yeah. So yeah, it is you drag to certain screen regions, which I think is a compromise for like, hey, if you've got a small screen, it might be a bit fiddly to tap precisely. It works great. That game continues to be Balatro and be the kind of game that is great if you've got like half an hour on a train with some time to waste and don't want to bring a dedicated handheld with you. And force closing the app from like a row of apps and then reopening it later, it 100% reliably will have saved where you were at in your run. It's really good at just, I completely force closed the app and came back to it, and it remembers what I was up to.
Oh, that's such a relief. Void's Vigil is not that way.
Yeah. For a game on mobile, particularly, like, being able to just force shut it at a moment's notice and not think about whether it's saved recently and just jump back into it, superb. Could not recommend more.
Yeah.
For, what is it? I think it's $10. I'm more than happy to pay for a game on mobile and just have it and not have any bullshit.
Yep, that sounds good.
That's been nice. If you like Balatro and want Balatro on a phone, it plays pretty decently on a phone. There's not a lot else I've played this week. There is a fair amount of news this week, though. Should we jump in and chat about some newsy bits?
Let's just do some news.
Yeah, let's start with this. We talked about Thatcher's Techbase last week.
We did.
Base, the game that has no politics in it anymore. This is a mod for Doom that got pulled off of the mod store because it was too political, and then had all of its politics stripped out, and it got back on the mod store. It's been removed from the mod store again. So, I'm going to read to you the message that Bethesda sent upon removing this no longer political mod from the mod store. This mod, Techbase, has been reported one or more times for a code of conduct violation, real-world politics, and deliberately disobeying a Zenimax employee, and has been removed. As a result, this account is receiving an official warning. Blah, 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 we could permanently terminate your account, because there's still politics in it, and you tried to Zenimax employees told you to take it down, and you changed it and put it back up, but that's disobeying us, we've decided. It's too political.
Far be it for me to engage in any sort of activism. But I think that Jim really set the example for all of us in terms of what needs to be done when this sort of bullshit happens. Thatcher's Techbase went up. They took it down for being political. Jim engaged in malicious compliance. Now, the argument is that it is still political. And that's true. Because it is. Because all art is.
I mean, yeah.
And so if you have a problem with Thatcher's Techbase, or N's Techbase, especially, then you have a problem with all of the content that has been produced as a mod for your game. And I truly think, and this will not happen because nobody's going to do this, but I truly believe the right thing to do is for every user possible to flag every mod possible as political.
I don't disagree with you there. I was thinking about this and I was like, look, in a world in which Wolfenstein of its era had you running around shooting Nazis, is it really so scary to be a little bit political about a shitty right-wing figure who is no longer currently alive and hasn't been for a while? Is that really such a bad thing to be a little political in your shooter?
Look at that shit that they get into now every time they put out a Wolfenstein game and people are killing Nazis.
Yeah.
Like, it's suddenly unfashionable to want to kill Nazis among a certain community of Nazis.
Let's make it uncontroversial and apolitical to think that Nazis and fascists should get shot sometimes.
I couldn't agree more. But that's the pushback that they will get. And they don't want pushback. They want everyone to just be quiet and consume and spend money.
Indeed. So some other news we have this week that I think is really interesting. A while ago we talked about the fact that Yuzu, one of the two big Switch emulators, got pulled off of the internet by Nintendo.
Yep.
And at the time we talked about the fact that, seemingly the reason they'd gone after Yuzu, but not its main competitor, Ryujinx, was that Yuzu had been, you could get early builds of it by paying money to them via a Patreon. B, gated behind that payment was the latest updated builds, which C, they were advertising as able to play pirated games that had leaked ahead of their release. Like, hey, pay us money to access the build that runs the unreleased game better. Which is, pretty clear you can see how,
that's not
Nintendo would go,
not good.
That's the line.
That's not good.
Yeah. And at the time, people were like, okay, they don't seem to have gone after Ryujinx because, presumably, they are not financially supported in any way. They've not advertised, hey, our emulator runs pirated pre-release games. They did all the things you should do to not draw attention or undue ire to the work that you're doing in emulation. However, yesterday, Ryujinx is gone from the internet. Reportedly, the creator of the emulator got a message from Nintendo that made an offer regarding the fate of the emulator, which the result of was the creator took it all offline. Now, when I hear made an offer, I don't think it's, we'll, compensate you for your time. I think that means threat. I think it means you don't want to get sued. Just back away now and we'll leave you alone.
I think they offered to send their legal team after it.
Yeah. Well, I think the offer probably was, if you take it down, we'll tell our legal team that they don't need to look any further at you. So yeah, as of right now, Ryujinx is gone, and there are some theories about why that might be, because the timing's weird, given that they didn't just go and swoop after it at the same time as Yuzu. This is very late into the Switch's lifespan. There's, I would say, probably 6 months before the Switch is replaced by another system. It feels like such a weird time in the lifespan to be going after it. I've got my theories about this, and this is based on nothing factual. This is just a gut instinct I have, and I'm very curious to see if this will play out. There's a lot of rumblings that the Switch successor will be backwards compatible, which means that it probably runs on a somewhat similar architecture to the first Switch. I wonder whether the current batch of Switch emulators might not have had a hard time playing stuff for the Switch too. Be that either because similar architecture of how games are made, or what I think is the more likely solution is, because the Switch has such a fucking huge install base, I'm of the suspicion that a lot of the first couple of years of the Switch successor's life are going to be cross-gen titles, where if you download a HD texture pack, if you're playing it on the next-gen system or whatever, but it's still the same Switch game, fundamentally. And I think they're trying to get rid of Ryujinx because they are worried about the first couple of years of games for their successor also being playable on emulators. I can't prove that, but that's my gut feeling.
I suspect that there are aspects of that are probably right on target. I also think that there is a bit of a financial reason behind it. I suspect that with the launch of the Switch 2, we will see a price reduction on the Switch 1, and while there was a huge install base created for the Switch, there will be people who pick up the Switch now, and expect to have access to a huge library, and Nintendo wants to sell them on it. I think that that's probably also a bit part of it. But no, I think you're probably right that they are seeking to mitigate the risk that shortly after launch, their underpowered hardware, which, I say underpowered, they're perfectly fine powered hardware, but by comparison to the computing ability of a PC, they're definitely going to be at a risk of emulation regardless of whether or not the architecture is similar, and chances are it probably is.
And that's the thing, I think that you're probably right on the money in as much as that, trying to keep the Switch selling at least until the end of this financial year, once they've announced a successor, is going to be a big thing. What I will say is that I don't think this is as big of a blow to the emulation scene as A, Yuzu was, and B, it could have been. For two reasons. This version of Ryujinx will be floating around on the internet forever. You won't be able to, there's no putting the genie back in the bottle. And if nothing else, this version of Ryujinx demonstratively will run 99% of the Switch's library that's ever existed. Maybe there'll be some stuff from the last 6 months of the system that won't run perfectly because of lack of updates, but that's not bad in terms of, there have been emulators with worse support of a system's library in the past, but also, Yuzu as an emulator often needed bespoke patches every time new major games came out to make sure they ran well. Ryujinx is a workhorse. Ryujinx, from what I understand, you throw basically anything at it and it'll run. New games never had trouble. You might need to put the new firmware into Ryujinx, but Ryujinx itself didn't need an update. It was just, where's the new Switch firmware? I have my suspicions that the version of Ryujinx that is kicking around will probably, by the time the Switch 2 comes out, run the whole Switch library regardless of development ending at this point. So I don't think it's the blow that it might otherwise have been, while still going, this does kind of suck for emulation and for down the line when eventually the Nintendo Switch eShop stops selling your games.
Yep, I agree with that. I think someone else will come along. It's just a matter of time.
And if nothing else, Ryujinx was open source, and
there's a fork.
There's forks of it. Someone will pick the project up and give it a slightly different name, and it'll float about again.
Mm-hmm.
Other news that touches on Nintendo this week. Pokémon Unite, the Pokémon MOBA that released a couple of years ago, is having to be shut down in Belgium and the Netherlands next year.
Oh?
Yeah, the Pokémon Company and Nintendo and Tencent work together on it. It's on Switch and on your Android and your iOS. It's being removed from digital stores on the 30th of November 2025 because of Belgium and the Netherlands' laws about loot box restrictions.
Oh!
Yeah. Loot boxes have been illegal under Belgium's gambling laws since back in 2018. Not a lot's been done to enforce it. The Netherlands has been trying to institute a similar ban. Basically, both countries have been trying to tighten down on loot boxes in games served to under 18s. While officially there's no word, it seems that is the reason that, the Pokemon Company is just pulling the game from sale to not risk running afoul of laws that say you shouldn't be throwing real money loot boxes at children.
Yeah. Stop exploiting children.
Yeah. Also of interest, while the app's not going away until November next year, subscriptions and in-game items will stop being available at the end of October this year. So there's going to be a year in which that game is available, but you can't access any in-game purchasable items in it in those countries.
That's awkward.
Yeah, that's a weird situation for a game that is like you're playing against people in other countries who will have access to those items. It's a very weird situation.
Creates an imbalance, I would say.
It does. You know how you fix that imbalance? Just give players in the Netherlands and Belgium those items for free. That'd be lovely.
Oh, and they could dominate then.
Right! They could become the biggest mobile games in those markets. And make the game seem more appealing to people in places with loot boxes. Some other digital game pricing stories we got this week. Horizon Zero Dawn, the first one of those Horizon games from back on the PS4.
Right, I remember.
Still looks pretty fucking good.
Yeah.
It was very, very late PS4 game, looks very good. But it was announced recently that it's getting a remaster, because apparently Sony is spending this gen remastering less than one generation old games.
That is so fucking unnecessary. Like, the PC version of that game looks gorgeous.
Right.
The PS4 version of that game looks gorgeous. What the fuck are we doing?
So, that's not even the worst bit of it. This isn't just a story about why the fuck are you remastering this game that doesn't really need it. Like a week ago, before the remaster was announced, you could buy the PS4 version of Horizon Zero Dawn Complete Edition with all the DLC on your PS5, despite it being a PS4 game, for £16. And then the remaster got announced. And then the price of the PS4 game shot up on the PlayStation Store. It was £16. How much do you reckon it costs now that they've got a remaster coming?
$59.99.
It's not quite that bad. $34.99. It's more than doubled in price. And I can tell you the maths on why they've jumped it £20, why they've put it to $34.99. What they're doing is they're doing an upgrade path for $10.
Fuck's sake.
And this is what they've been doing with their other remasters, is you spend $10 and you get the PS4 version up to the PS5 version. But the PS5 remaster's gonna be £45. So they didn't want you having like £16 and then you spend £10 and get up a $30 jump in value. So they increased the price £20 so that you could pay the extra £10 to upgrade. So that it would still be a £10 upgrade path, just on a £20 more expensive base version of the game.
Fucking...
Right.
Oh,
right,
you know,
isn't that like really fucking cheeky?
I don't think there's going to be the patience for this. I really do feel like it's too soon. I mean, we're not just talking one generation back. We're talking one installment back in this quote-unquote franchise with 2 games.
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know, some other mobile stuff. Who knows? There's some... But you get what I'm saying.
There's a VR game in there, but yeah, I get what you're saying.
Like, I cannot imagine that the market is going to be interested in absorbing this. I don't know who's doing their math, but it does not make any sense to me. And I hope they are spending a lot of money doing it, and I hope it just utterly fucking flops. Because this is so unnecessary at this juncture, and it's so clearly illustrative of we don't have anything new. Like, the last new thing we had took us 8 years, and it has quite clearly not gone so hot.
The thing is, fundamentally, your remaster cannot be worth as much as you want people to think it's worth if you have to artificially raise the price of the old version so that people don't just buy the old version. Like, clearly, you do not have confidence that you are delivering X amount of additional value with this remaster, because you are concerned that it will only sell if you can narrow the gap between it and the old version. You need the situation to be, oh, for only $10 more I could have the better version, because when the difference is 35, people go, that's not 35 worth of improvement, is it?
And it's apparently not going to be enough of an improvement that they could just expect the entire PS5 audience who had already purchased Horizon on PS4 to pay $10 and justify it. Like, that's... Clearly, it's not good enough for that.
Well, If you already own the PS4 version, it is only $10 to upgrade.
Well, of course it will be.
Yeah, it's only if you're buying it now that they don't want you getting a cheap version of the game.
But when you look at the install bases, right, and the way it would have to shake out, yeah, there's probably a shit ton of people who bought the PS4 version that are eligible for the upgrade, but how many of them have PS5s?
Yeah.
This is fucking stupid.
It really fucking is. We got one kind of positive thing to end on this week. It's forcing companies to admit to something shitty.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. So, you know how when you buy a digital version of a game, you are not buying the game, you are buying a license to play the game, blah, blah, blah.
This is one of those things that I have been banging on about for more than 15 years, pointing out to people that, like, your problem is regulatory.
Yes. So, about that, at least in California, digital storefronts are going to have to start making it clear at the point of purchase that you don't actually own the digital content you purchase. Customers in California will have to be informed that if they buy a game on Steam or console, for example, that they are only acquiring a license for the content. Terms such as buy and purchase will be banned from the sale process unless a list of caveats is met.
So good, I guess. But this is what I would love to see happen, like in a perfect world, is that these changes happen and people sort of realize, oh, wait, what? Like, all of these people who've never actually thought about the way digital goods function, that they would think about it and say, that's stupid, right? But they won't, by and large.
No.
You know, there might be a checkbox required. I hereby agree to the terms of link to something that they're not going to read. And that's that. It's good that they are putting pressure on companies to make changes, but this is a pretty toothless change, and if you're not going to do something that's actually going to impact this situation in a meaningful way, why fucking bother?
I'll say this. It's nice to see politicians understanding and recognizing an issue that exists that I assumed would be off their radar. Because I will read a quote from California Assemblymember Jackie Irwin that honestly surprised me to read, because it sounds like someone who actually fucking understands somewhat of the digital age, who is a politician. As retailers continue to pivot away from selling physical media, the need for consumer protections on the purchase of digital media has become increasingly more important. I thank the governor for signing the bill, ensuring the false and deceptive advertising sellers of digital media incorrectly telling consumers they own their purchases hopefully becomes a thing of the past. Like, that is some recognition of the problem, and I'm glad that politicians have at least locked in on physical media is becoming less common. It's a problem if people don't know that they don't own the shit they're buying. Like, I'm glad we've reached that point, and that someone explained that to a room of politicians and convinced them to listen to that, and not just tune out.
But also, you don't own your John Deere tractor.
Yeah.
Like, this is a far bigger issue than digital assets online, which, don't get me wrong, is important, and particularly of importance to the audience of people listening to us now. But you don't own your toaster to some extent. If it has, anything that has a Wi-Fi connected system, you don't own it at this point. You don't have right to repair.
The number of fucking stories that happen of like, oh, this tech device, they just decided it's not supported anymore, so it's just going to stop working, despite the fact it could work perfectly fine, because they just decided they want you to buy new ones. That's just a thing they can do.
Or, you get an implant, a medical device that you need, and the manufacturer goes out of business, and now you have to go through a surgery to have it removed and continue living as you did without it, because you cannot get anyone to maintain it any longer. These are the things that, like, this is all connected. These are all related issues. And we need to force our elected officials to hold to account these corporations that are stripping us of our ability to make use of the things that we purchase. It's incredibly frustrating, and it's only getting worse, and it's permeating every part of our system, and it started with software.
Yeah.
That's where this began, and that's how it's managed to proliferate in this way. And something needs to be done. This is not doing something. This is merely telling people that there is a problem, and anybody who's paying attention and cares already knows.
Indeed. And I want to believe that this will make more people aware of the problem, and that will be a step toward doing something about it. I'm not optimistic about that. I would go as far as to say I'm pessimistic about that.
I think it's more likely that the politicians will be able to say, well, we've addressed it, and move on.
That is always the concern. You know, I try and take the wins for what they are, but this is step one on what needs to be a real big road.
I'd love for it to be a win. I don't feel like it's a win. but God willing, it could be.
Fair. But yeah, I think that's everything for this week. There we go. Tight hour.
Yeah,
look at us go.
We did it. Well, you know what else is tight, Laura?
What?
All of the work that you do on the internet.
Fuck.
Tight. Can you tell people where they can find it?
Well, they can find it at Laura K. Buzz pretty much everywhere on the internet. I've got that good unified branding going on. Things you can check out from me this week. I am currently doing a series of videos on YouTube where I am going back and rewatching an anime called Wandering Sun, which was a little over 15 years ago, the thing that made me come out as trans. It's 11 episodes long, and I, at age 17, sat and watched all 11 episodes back to back and came out as trans that same night. So 15 years later, I'm coming back and revisiting this thing that was impactful for me in many ways and looking at it through a new lens. The second episode of that will be up this week. It'll be up by the time you see this. I've also got an episode of Accessibility that's up this week, talking about non-speaking character representation in Echoes of Wisdom and the things I think it largely gets right and the couple of missteps I think there are. I get a little bit personal in that video. I'm really proud of it. I hope people check it out. It'll be up on Friday. There is a clear spoiler warning for, like, some of the discussions based on stuff 2 hours into the game. I then give a clear warning before anything more late game. But yeah, Laura K. Buzz, you'll find me everywhere on the internet doing stuff. What about you, Conrad? Where are you at on the internet?
Oh, you could find me at Conrad Zimmerman on Instagram and Blue Sky, and you can hang out with me on Twitch at twitch.tv/thatconradzimmerman. I'm on Sundays, Mondays, and Tuesdays. You can buy anti-capitalist propaganda and Jimquisition merchandise at mercenarycreative.com. And everything that I do online gets supported through Patreon at patreon.com/fistshark. And Laura, do you know who else has a Patreon?
Oh, I can guess.
Yep, it's Stephanie Sterling. It's patreon.com/Jim Sterling. They have wrestling dates coming up, but they are so far back, if they've been announced on their social media, that I couldn't find them.
If you want to find them, look up the latest episode of the Jimquisition, which I think at the end has a few minutes of talking about wrestling dates.
Yeah, I think that's right. Also, it's just a good episode. You could go and listen to that.
It's one of my favourite ones in a while. I sent Steph a message after subtitling it going, that one was real good. It was real on point, that one.
Real good. Real good. They're also on Twitch, twitch.tv/Jim Sterling, and she does not have a schedule. It's random times, but go check it out. It is a wonderful time. And I think that's us.
I reckon so.
Oh, the Patreon. Oh. Did I? Yeah, we did that. Okay, yeah. No,
you
that's
did.
us.
Yeah.
That's us.
Yeah, we did. Yeah. Thank you very much, everyone. Bye.
Bye.